If you fly quadcopters, then sooner or later, you're going to end up in a tree. Today, we're going to look at every way to get your quadcopter out of a tree. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Well, before we get a quadcopter out of a tree, we've got to get a quadcopter into a tree. So let's do it. Let's crash a quadcopter into a tree. We'll start with this low tree. Oh, there we go. Good and stuck. The very first thing I do when I've got a quad stuck in a tree is try to find it first and see how it's stuck. And having a beeper on the quad is a great way to do that. If you can't find the quad with the beeper, you can activate turtle mode and kind of wiggle it just a little to find like the moving leaves and branches. Oh, there it is. But you don't want to go crazy with turtle mode right at the start. Instead, what I'm going to do is just wiggle the sticks a little bit and see which way spins a prop and which way has a prop that's totally blocked, and just try and get the quad moving. Don't spend a lot of time bashing the props against a branch. You'll blow your ESC, but eventually you will get the quad to fall, hopefully, out of the tree. But sometimes turtle mode just doesn't work. Maybe you broke all your props, or maybe your motors are tied up with Spanish moss or something else. What other kind of options do you have? You know, sticking a quad in a tree is harder than you think. It kept falling out and wouldn't get stuck. Until this time, where it got stuck on a pretty low branch. So I guess we'll give this honorable mention to the method of grabbing the branch and shaking it. Hey, that's a way to get a quad out of a tree, and if you can reach a branch, it usually works. But let's do this right. Let's get this quadcopter way up high in this tree and really get it stuck. The next method of getting a quad out of a tree is to climb the tree, which, if you're an old fat guy like me, is not your preferred method. You can sometimes find a neighborhood kid to pay 20 bucks to and get them to climb the tree, but then if the kid falls out of the tree and breaks their arm, that's on you. So, you know, but here I go. We're going to climb the tree and get the quad out. Well, I don't have to tell you what the disadvantages of the climb a tree method are. It requires a certain level of athleticism, and it has a certain amount of danger. But eventually, you get to a point where you can reach the branch that the quad is stuck in, and you just shake the crap out of it till the quad falls on the ground. Another downside of the climb a tree method is that not all trees are well suited to climbing, at least not without specialized equipment. This is a yellow pine here in my yard, and as you can see, it's not really very climbable. Well, if you can't climb a tree with your own 2 hands and feet, what about bringing a ladder to the situation? We're going to need a taller ladder. Nope, still not tall enough. Now, a ladder is one of the most reliable ways to get a quad out of a tree if you have a ladder that's tall enough, but they are big and they are heavy, and you may not always have one with you. That's where this little guy comes in. This is a collapsible telescoping ladder. As you can see it, but you're not going to take it backpacking, but you certainly could have it in the trunk of your car or the bed of your pickup truck. You just unsnap it, and it just extends like this. And it can lock into an A-frame configuration or a straight configuration. I think we're going to go with the straight configuration for this one. Now, what I'm about to show you is not an OSHA-approved way of mounting a ladder in a tree. But if you've got a big, bushy fir tree like this, you can just kind of lean the ladder against the outside of the branches, and they will kind of cradle it, and they'll spring a little bit as you climb on the ladder. But I'm not saying you should do this, but I'm saying I have done this, and it is, well, you'll see. Okay, so yeah, don't do that, folks. Don't do that. That's not safe. The branch will break and you'll be doomed. Let's try a little bit of a safer way of getting a quadcopter out of a tree. Maybe that leaves us on the ground. This is a telescoping utility pole. It's made for painting ceilings, dusting up high. It's made of aluminum and it extends in sections, and each section locks in the extended position. They come in lengths of about 25 to about 40 feet. The end of these poles are typically threaded, and you can screw various things on there. I'll show you one of those in a minute. The end of this pole is particularly interesting because it can actually be angled, and I'm actually going to turn it and angle it 90 degrees so it can kind of act like a hook and maybe hook the quad out of the tree. Now, I really feel like the extending pole is one of the best ways to get quads out of a tree. It's lightweight, it's not too expensive. You can, if you have a vehicle, it'll probably fit in the vehicle one way or the other, and it has a pretty high success rate at getting quads out of trees, but there are some limitations. One of them is that it's only like so long, right? So if your quad is out of reach, if it's further away than the pole is long, then you're kind of out of luck. The other is that these aluminum extending poles, they're not the lightest thing in the world, and maneuvering it precisely to get it through the branches to get it exactly where you want it to be can be a little bit tricky. This is the Drone Saver. It's sold on thedronesaver.com, and it is an extendable fiberglass pole. It goes to a distance of about 30 feet, and it's got a little hook on the end. This thing beats the metal pole in almost every way. It's lighter, it's smaller, and it extends further than most of the poles do. Its main disadvantage is that it uses friction to lock itself in place, and so if you need to push with it, you can actually cause it to collapse. But as you can see here, I was able to reach my quad and get it down.
Come on, keep going. Yes!
Now, this little device here is known as the quad grabber, and I owe a big apology to the gentleman who sent this to me probably 2 years ago when I first had the idea to make this video. And it took me this long to make the video, and now I've made it, and this is his product. This is actually just a home product of his own. I don't even think he sells it. Maybe he was going to sell it 2 years ago. Anyway, it screws onto the end of the utility pole, and it's got a spring-loaded claw, and then you pull this rope to close the claw and use it to sort of grab and pull and manipulate branches and so forth. I'm not 100% sure how confident I am, because like how much leverage can you get on this rope, and how tight can you really cause it to, like, here, I'm going to grab my hand. It grabs okay. It's probably better than nothing, but anyway, kudos to this guy. His YouTube channel is Big Data Pimp. I'll put a link to his video where he announces this down in the video description if you want to check it out. Well, what if you haven't got any of these lovely things? What if you're stuck making do with whatever there is around? You can always throw something at the quad, like a stick or a rock. Rock's going to be pretty heavy. Well, the problem is that a lot of times you miss, and a lot of times if you hit, it doesn't work. But hey, if you got nothing else, throw a stick at it, throw a log at it, throw something at it. But what if the quad's up so high that you can't reach it with something heavy enough to knock it out of the tree? Well, then you're going to need some rope. This next batch of solutions relies on getting a piece of rope over the branch and then shaking it until the quadcopter just falls out of its own volition. And we're going to start with an Arborist's weight, which is a leather bag full of lead shot. It weighs about 12 ounces. They come in different weights, and you're just going to sling it up there. And if your aim is true, it will go over the branch and you can get your quadcopter back. Now, not everybody is going to have an Arborist's weight. They cost about 15 bucks. You might consider getting one, but you can just use a half-empty bottle of water, 20-ounce water bottle. I've seen this done more than once. Now, I got that lower branch the first time, and I got the high branch the first time. Amazing. Works really freaking well, to be honest with you. In many ways, I think the rope and weight method is the MVP of this whole video. A length of rope is cheap, it's lightweight, it's small, and almost any rescue you can imagine could probably be accomplished with this method, given enough determination. But how high can you really throw it? This is how I was taught to throw it by someone who seemed to know what he was talking about. He said, use an underarm swing, get it really going, and the key is don't use your strength to try and throw it. Just whip it and swing it and try and get it as high as you can. Of course, learning to do it precisely is tricky, but you just keep doing it more than once, and you hope it doesn't fly behind you and nearly hit the electrical lines and you're going across your yard. Well, if precision is your goal, this is a tool you might consider. This is an Arborist slingshot, and you can make one of these yourself, but I just bought a professional grade one because I wanted to try to have the best. Now the big advantage of the slingshot is that you can aim it precisely and dial it in a way that it's harder to do when you are throwing by hand. But I also wondered if it could throw higher, so I tried to shoot it over the whole top of this tree, and sure enough, it made it.
Yes!
But if you really want the ultimate in precision, this is a Spud gun. A Spud gun uses compressed air to shoot, well, originally it was used to shoot potatoes. We're going to use it to shoot this Arborist weight. And the big question that I wanted to answer is just how far does this go and how precise is it compared to the slingshot? And I was really disappointed with how far it was shooting the Arborist weight. I feel like I was able to get it even farther just by throwing the line. When you consider that you've got to have an air compressor with you to make this darn thing work, I think this is a pretty niche solution, but pretty freaking cool. Bow and arrow, that's pretty precise. And you know, like you could tie a rope to the arrow and shoot the arrow, and then it would go right over the branch. Well, I mean, I couldn't do that. I don't know how to shoot archery. But I have a friend who does, and she graciously came out to help with this experiment. Well, as you probably would have guessed, the Arborist line was too heavy for the arrow to carry it. So we got some fishing line, and this is actually the approach that most people recommend. You shoot the fishing line over the branch, and then you use the fishing line to pull a heavier cord over the branch, and use that to pull the branch.
Okay.
I think that's more of a winner because you can aim it better.
That's true.
I mean, I could get any branch we wanted with the arrow.
So here are the downsides of this approach. We shot like 4 arrows and like 3 of them got stuck in the tree. If you don't shoot clean through, you're probably not getting your arrow back, and you may not get your line back unless you cut it. In addition to archery, I am also not good at casting a rod on reel, casting a fishing line. So this is another way that people have talked about. You tie like a nut or a washer to the end of a fishing line and you cast it over the branch. Again, precision is going to be a challenge here depending on your skill level, but let's see how well it works.
1, 2. Oh, we hit something.
I heard a thunk. There, it's coming down.
Not far enough.
No, hang on, hang on. I got it.
It's
Yeah.
coming down.
Yeah.
Slowly, slowly.
Actually, it worked really freaking well. The fishing line didn't have any drag, so the weight of the washer was enough to pull it down as we played it out. It actually worked better than I thought it would. Oh man, can you believe it? I got my quadcopter stuck in the tree again. This time the method that we're going to use is we're going to tie the rope to a quadcopter and fly the quadcopter to make the line go over the branch. Now this is really the ultimate in precision because you can just put the line exactly where you want it. Let's see how well it works. And holy cow, it worked perfectly the very first time. But don't let that fool you. There are some drawbacks to this method. And the main drawback is that unlike an arborist's weight, a quadcopter is not going to just fall down through the branches gently. If you don't get it over the branch and clear, it's going to get tangled in the branches and then you're going to have 2 stuck quadcopters. What if you don't have any of this stuff? No rope, no water bottle, not even like a stick to throw at it. You could always hit it with your quadcopter. Now, the first challenge with hitting it with your quadcopter is actually finding the darn thing, especially on standard definition video. Like, I could totally see where this quad was from the ground, but trying to find where to launch my freaking quad into the tree, I just can't see it. I literally can't see it. The second challenge is that you got to be going fast enough to smack the other quad out of the tree, but the faster you're going, the less precise you're going to be. And if you think it's easy to nail a quad dead on because you can fly through a race gate, trust me, it's hard. The faster you're going, the less precise you are. But eventually you decide, okay, I'm going for it. I'm going to go full throttle and send it. And so now there's 2 quadcopters stuck in a tree, and that leaves us with the only other option. A chainsaw. Cut down the tree. Yeah, some people do this, but I can't really recommend it. Falling trees is dangerous, and it's kind of, I mean, trees are important. Trees take 30 years to grow. So maybe we shouldn't cut them down just to get our quadcopter back. Also, my chainsaw wouldn't start today because the gas I was using was stale. So, cutting down trees. Nah, don't do that. Another method that I will not be demonstrating in this video is the method of shooting the quadcopter out of the tree. Europeans, Americans solve every problem by shooting it. Obviously, you're not going to shoot your quadcopter. Obviously, what people have said they do is they will shoot the branch that the quadcopter is held up by, and they will shoot the branch and break the branch. There are some obvious downsides to this. Number one is if I do this in a video, I will get demonetized, so I'm not going to do that. Number two, if you shoot a bullet into the air, and even if you hit the branch, the bullet is going to come down somewhere, and it's just not safe to shoot guns into the air. So cool for you if you've done this, but my official advice is not to shoot your quadcopter out of a tree. Now, when I decided to title this video, "Every Way to Get a Quadcopter Out of a Tree," I knew I was setting a pretty big challenge ahead of myself. There are a couple methods I want to acknowledge that I didn't think was a good idea to put in the video. And the first one of those is calling your local fire department. I didn't make this up. There are stories out there of people who just called the fire. Don't call 911. Just call the office number, call the dispatch number, and ask. And some people have said, they were like, yeah, sure, we'll come out and we'll do it. And sometimes they bring a ladder truck or ladders and they just climb up there and get the quad out. Sometimes I've heard stories of them shooting it with a water hose and knocking it out. That is something I asked my local fire department about, and they said, no, we've never done that. And it doesn't sound like that's a life-threatening emergency, so I don't think that we would. The other way to get a quadcopter out of a tree is to hire an arborist, a tree professional. And they can climb trees, they can cut down trees safely if that's what you decide is the right thing to do. They can definitely get a quadcopter out of any tree. That's what they do. I called a local arborist and they said for $300 they would come get any quad out of any tree. That's about the price of your quad though, so you got to really think about that. I have heard stories of it being done cheaper. And I've also heard stories of like putting an ad on Craigslist or Nextdoor and some arborist comes, which is basically just some dude who has some climbing equipment and likes to make $100 on the weekend. Again, there's upsides and downsides to that, and you got to decide how you feel about it. That is it. Every single possible way to get a quadcopter out of a tree. There is not one way that you can think of that I left out of this video that you're definitely not going to tell me about in the comments. I know that some of the things in this video, like the Spud gun and the launcher, the catapults, slingshot, those things are pretty expensive to buy, and you can make a cheaper version. I'm going to put links down in the video description to, well, if you want to buy them, I'll put links there, but also to some tutorials for how to make a cheaper version, because you know, not everybody's going to spend $200 on a freaking slingshot because they have a YouTube channel and they're just like, whatever. So, and I'll keep updating those links with other suggestions. If you do have suggestions for better ways to do this, I'm going to keep the video description updated as the comments come in and try and, you know, if you need to get your quad out of a tree, I hope this video can actually help you in addition to entertaining you. Thank you so much for watching. That's going to do it for the video. Happy flying. And thank you, trees, for everything you do for us.